Well, hello and welcome to our panel discussion, Rights in Action, Lived Experience Leading Policy. My name is Laura Bain, and just to give a bit of a self-description, I'm a white woman in my early 40s. I have straight brown hair tied back in a ponytail, and today I'm wearing a bright pink sweater and I have thick glasses, which might be an indication to some people that I'm partially sighted, which I am. So I work as the Accessibility Outreach Coordinator for Halifax Regional Municipality, and I've also been part of the Partnership for Access Awareness Nova Scotia Planning Committee that's been organizing all the events this week. And we're really happy to have you here today. I'm just going to start with some technical considerations. This event is being recorded and will be posted to NS Leo's YouTube channel to share. Anyone who's registered will receive an email with the recording link once it's available. ASL interpretation and CART is available for the event. You can access the captions by clicking on the CC icon on the menu bar below. ASL interpreters will be pinned on the screen with the panelists, but there could be a slight delay when switching between interpreters. If you have any technical issues, you can either put it in the chat to the host, Amanda Hendry, or you can email programs@nsleo.com to receive assistance. I humbly acknowledge that the Nova Scotia League for Equal Opportunities is one of many stewards on the ancestral and unceded territory of the land of the Wabanaki Confederacy, known as Mi'kma'ki, which consists of the Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, Passamaquoddy, and Penobscot nations, the people of the Dawn. We are committed to good stewardship in our relationships and connections to all its people and the intention of the Peace and Friendship Treaty. Nova Scotia has grown and continues to evolve through the contributions of the 400-year legacy of the rich history and culture of African Nova Scotians. The disability rights movement began at the same time as the women's rights movement. More than 60 years later, persons with disabilities, both visible and invisible, continue to advocate for an inclusive and accessible quality of life. We'll continue to speak with a united voice for equitable access to education, the built environment, employment, economic security, public transportation, goods and services, communications, democratic engagement, recreation activities, and justice. Every year, beginning at the last Sunday in May, Access Awareness Week is an opportunity that allows Nova Scotians to promote these issues to audiences from all walks of life. Nova Scotia was actually the first province in Canada to champion Access Awareness Week as an extension of Rick Hanson's 1987 Man in Motion World Tour. So for 39 years, Nova Scotians have organized community events, press conferences, forums, concerts, and lectures during Access Awareness Week to bring attention to the importance of removing barriers for people with disabilities. This year's theme is Our Voices, Our Votes, Disability Rights in Action. So now we're going to get started on our insightful panel discussion on disability rights advocacy to government action. We're going to explore the journey from awareness to tangible change to improve the lives of persons with disabilities. We have some wonderful panelists with us today: Dr. Linda Campbell, Rabia Khedr, Vicky Levack. We're going to have a question and answer period at the end of the discussion. We'll try to leave as much time as possible for that. So please send your questions into the chat, preferably to the host, Amanda Hendry, if possible, and we'll attempt to answer as many questions as we can. So without further ado, I'll get started. And I'm going to start with Rabia. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your advocacy work?
Okay, well, what can I say? My name is Rabia Khedr. I'm talking to you from Mississauga, Ontario, the traditional territories most recently of the Mississaugas of the New Credit, and I'm eternally grateful to our First Peoples, the original inhabitants of these lands that have enabled me to live and thrive here, despite colonization. And I am committed to truth, reconciliation, and disability justice for all peoples, including all First Peoples within Canada and around the world. Um, I am a person with a disability. I have a one-liner that I often use to describe myself, and that gives you a little bit of hint of who I am. So I am, as I say, a hyphen with many hijabs. Hijab is
You're not getting my phone right.
the scarf I'm wearing. It is blue. Um, I am a Muslim, Punjabi, Pakistani, Canadian woman, wife, mother, daughter of aging parents, sibling of people with disabilities, including complex needs and intellectual disability. I'm a social entrepreneur, a systems
Oh,
disruptor.
okay.
I
No,
happen to
I
have
just thought
a
because I
disability.
thought it had to.
I am blind, in fact. Um, and I'm doing this work because I just fell into it one day. I graduated with a degree in political science and industrial relations, hoping to carve out a career in human resources, but slowly found myself working in disability space. And my main work is around intersectionality. So, how race, gender, faith, and other identity markers impact the experiences of people with disabilities. That we are not just disabled people, we are a whole person with a packaged identity that needs to be respected, reflected, and responded to in terms of social policy. And I'm committed to nothing about us without us. So I run Disability Without Poverty as its national director. That's my heavy duty policy work today. But I have served as a commissioner with the Ontario Human Rights Commission. I have served on the board of Accessibility Standards Canada. I do currently sit as an advisory member on the Ministers Disability Advisory Group federally. And I run a grassroots organization providing direct services to people with disabilities that are culturally and spiritually relevant, called Dean Support Services, which also oversees the Race and Disability Canada project. So there you go. That's more than an intro.
I really appreciate you giving us that fulsome introduction to yourself and also speaking about how the various identities that you hold have informed your advocacy work. And I think we'll probably get into that more as we move through our panel today. Um, Linda, can I ask you to tell us about yourself and about your advocacy work?
Saying you are Liz.
I'm Linda Campbell. I'm living here in Halifax on Mi'kma'ki. I'm a professor at St. Mary's University. I focus on environmental science. I've got many hats, as many of you do. I'm a white woman who has brown curly hair and glasses. I grew up in Alberta and I moved to Halifax in 2011. I also work with two interpreters. Oh, sorry. We are working with two interpreters for this panel. Interpreter. Um, so you're gonna hear a different voice, even though it's mine. And that does not reflect my gender. Their voices do not reflect my gender.
Great, thank you for
I just
clarifying
wanted
that.
to clarify that in case, especially for Rabia, who's blind. You're going to hear a male's voice, but I am a female. And I am, oh, sorry, it froze. Could you say that again? My work is advocacy, starting with the Indigenous environment. I'm sorry, I'm going to go back. My work, I work with advocacy, starting with environment, and I became deaf and I use sign language. I also advocate for rights in the environment. I have the rights to be, I'm also a researcher. I'm a holistic person as well, as Rabia had mentioned. And I've become more involved with the deaf community and advocacy for people with disabilities. I'm also involved with film. And when we make a film, it's in regards to the Halifax explosion and the deaf experience. I made that film back in 2017 in regards to the Halifax explosion and how it impacted the area. And the deaf school as well here in Halifax. A lot of people with disabilities were very interested in the film and had contacted us about that. And that was when the Nova Scotia government tried to set up the Accessibility Act at that time. We were having issues in the beginning with the Accessibility Act. A lot of people with disabilities were against the initial act. So there was a lot of advocacy in regards to that act, Bill 59. Bill 59. And I was involved with the active group to improve Bill 59. And we were quite successful because the act was passed. And now I work with Nova Scotia Accessibility Association under the Minister of Equality. Oh, I volunteer, not a paid position. I'm also the Minister of Justice. No, sorry. Not the Department of Equity, the Department of Justice. I've been involved with their work and improving standards and being involved with developing standards and communication information. It's been a wonderful experience working with them. It's been across Nova Scotia and different backgrounds and perspectives and skill sets, focusing on the same goal of access by 2030. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. And we're going to get into talking about what's happening in Nova Scotia a little bit more in our next question. And it's been a few years since I've seen that film, but I would encourage anyone to watch it because it was really informative at the time. And we're going to have fun because I can't really see well enough to see when you're signing and not signing. So I'm going to do my best not to interject and cut you off. Last but not least, I'll ask Vicky to please introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your advocacy work.
Okie dokie.
I just wanted to say also thank you I just wanted to say thank you before I finish.
Absolutely.
So I hopefully you can hear. I'm all done now. Thank you.
So when you hear me say thank you, you'll know that I'm finished my statement.
Perfect. That works.
Are we good?
You're good.
Okay. Hi, I'm Victoria Levack. People call me Vicky. People joke that I am highly famous. I am a white woman in her mid-30s. I use a power wheelchair. I have blue hair right now. It's not natural, I promise. And I work like Rabia and Linda. I wear many, many hats. But I am a sister, a daughter of, I guess, aging parents, although they're aging very gracefully. I am an actress and a thorn in a lot of politicians' sides. I think I speak my mind a lot. I am the spokesperson for one of them, for the Disability Rights Coalition of Nova Scotia. I am an activist. I focus mainly on the areas of housing, the right to have housing, but as well as the right to sexual pleasure and the right to marriage. I am a strong advocate for the LGBTQ community, even though I do not identify as that myself. I believe everybody has the right to love and to be loved and to be with the one they love. And right now, we don't have marriage equality in this country for people with disabilities. So that is my next big thing. I got into this work like Rabia by accident. I was sort of forced because I was forced to live in an institution for a decade against my will because the government decided I was, quote, too disabled to live in community. With the DRC's human rights case, which I was not a plaintiff of, but it did affect me and many others in the disability community. We proved that that is, of course, untrue, which we all know. And what else do I do right now? Yeah, I do a lot of activism work. I'm lucky enough to have my bills covered by the government. So I focus on the work that is I'm passionate about. Sometimes I get paid for it. Sometimes, most of the time, I do not. And now I'm out of the institution and living in a condo with 24-hour support. And I'm very grateful for that. Although I had to fight for it for a decade. And I'll be honest, I probably will never retire because there's always more work to be done. And I guess that's it.
Yeah, thanks, Vicky. And as I've heard you say before, just because you don't get paid doesn't mean it's not work. And certainly doesn't mean it's not making a significant contribution. So as we learned in each of your introductions, you've all been involved in different pieces of policy that specifically impact people with disabilities. Rabia, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about your work on the Canada Disability Benefit. And I know there's a lot to say about it, but maybe just give us a sense for those that aren't familiar of where that piece of policy is at right now.
Well, high level, I got involved with the Canada Disability Benefit. Ironically, after the throne speech promised the Canada Disability Benefit in September 2020, and as we speak, there is a throne speech happening by the King in Ottawa today. Interesting. And let's see if there's any mention of disabled people in that throne speech. So that promise was made, and a bunch of people felt it was important for lived experience to be activated, to build a movement, to make sure that government gets it right. And that's how I got involved. And in my role as the National Director of Disability Without Poverty, certainly heavily involved because that was our laser focus. So the Canada Disability Benefit journey was a bill was introduced, an election was called, there was lots of pressure from the community, the bill was reintroduced. All party support was garnered across the House and Senate, and eventually the bill became law. And finally, it achieved royal assent and was budgeted. The budgeted amount is too little for too few. It's only up to $200 a month. It does not lift disabled people out of poverty. The rates of poverty amongst disabled people are significant. 1 in 4 Canadians with disabilities live in poverty. 27% of the Canadian population identifies living with a disability. Approximately 1.6 million Canadians are financially with disabilities are financially insecure. So the Canada Disability Benefit today is set to roll out July the 1st. The government is saying everything is on track and on time. However, the regulations are still not to par the way the disability community advocates would want. They're tied to the disability tax credit. So eligibility is tied to the disability tax credit. People have to have that. And in order to get that, they have to file medical forms. And that means they should have a doctor. So there are barriers, and more barriers. So far, the government has not introduced the amendment to the Income Tax Act that would make the Canada Disability Benefit income exempt federally. So right now, our advocacy is focused on putting pressure on the government to fast track that amendment. So let's see what happens. So did they make the promise? Did they trigger systems change? Yeah, technically they did. Did they actually meet the expectations and the intentions that were promised? No, they didn't. Most benefits put disabled people at least $1,000, 30% below the poverty line, and living with a disability is 30% above the poverty line. So I am constantly drawing on my lived experience, the experiences that I encounter of other people that I'm involved in supporting and engaging with. And, you know, just the whole disability rights journey to talk about what's happened, where we're at, and what needs to happen. So there's a lot of work to do. It ain't over.
Mm-hmm. No, we can hope that we can all retire at some point, right? Hopefully at some point.
Absolutely, but it's not going to happen in our lifetime. We're going to have to keep pushing hard for the amount to be increased. We're going to have to keep collecting data and stories and bringing them forward to government. People mean to do the right thing. Does it mean they actually do it? Not necessarily. They have to be constantly reminded when it's not their lived experience. So that's my recent advocacy, but I've also been involved, as I mentioned, with, you know, the Accessible Canada Act through the standards development process. At locally, I've been involved with, you know, at the city level with the implementation of the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. So really seeing that rollout. I've been involved in, you know, training and awareness and all kinds of good stuff, and especially spotlighting the intersectionality around disability. So, you know, really helping people recognize that we are more than our disability.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. Linda, you touched on your involvement with the Bill 59 Community Alliance and now with the Accessibility Advisory Board. I'm wondering if you want to just tell us a little bit more about your work on the Nova Scotia Accessibility Act and sort of where that's at now from your perspective.
So there's many wonderful people working on the Accessibility Act and the standards and for standards development. We're working together and having at a roundtable discussion or through Zoom. We're having conversations about bringing in lived experience from different communities and trying to bring that together so we get a variety of different perspectives when developing standards. Generally, to improve the quality of life for everyone, it's very challenging work. Because it's different experiences, different perspectives, different approaches. But it's very enjoyable. I feel like I've learned so much. How we're trying to put all the pieces of the puzzle together to develop good standards. I'm trying to think if did I answer your question?
Yeah,
So how's it going? So could you just ask the question again, please, just for a reminder?
Oh, yeah. So I think that you mostly did answer the question. I was just asking about your involvement with the Nova Scotia Accessibility Act and kind of how that's going currently from your perspective. But I think you gave us somewhat of an update on that. Just if there's anything that you want to add about the work that's ongoing with that currently.
Yeah, for people that live in Nova Scotia, there's a lot of opportunities to get involved in the Nova Scotia Accessibility Directorate, either at the board level or with the Standards Development Committee. Yeah, just look out for all those opportunities and apply for those. Thank you.
Great. And yeah, there can be competing access needs, of course, when you have people with different disabilities working on something, but it can be so powerful when we come together rather than working in silos. And Vicky, you've, as you mentioned, been working with the Disability Rights Coalition, and I know you've been involved in the actions which have led to the remedy. I'm wondering if you can give us a bit of background on that work that you've been doing and also let us know where things are at right now.
Okay, well, I came in late to the remedy, and what I mean by that is I was not there in the beginning. I came involved in about 2020 during COVID because one of the lawyers heard about my story from my father, who had seen what the DRC was doing in regards to the human rights case. He reached out to Claire McNeil, who was the lawyer at the time, said, "My daughter's in the same boat, or in a very similar boat. Um, it's a very crappy boat. Can you help her?" So she called me and told me, quote, "Hey, would you like to get out of there?" And I said, "That's an option." And she was like, "Yeah, they're breaking all these laws." And I'm like, "Okay, well, we got to stop that." And so that's how I got involved with her, with Claire. And then Claire took me to a meeting with the DRC just to see what it was all about. And then they asked me to be their spokesperson after an hour. And I was like, okay. And then I became involved in the human rights case from basically a reporter perspective, which is I would sit and be like, okay, here's what's going on. And then I would report to different news outlets who wanted information. They would come to me. I would relay that information as best I could. I'm not a lawyer. I don't speak legalese. I don't have a degree, blah, blah. But I did my best. And apparently I did pretty well because they've kept me on 5.5 years later. And right now what's happening is the case, of course, we won. Yay. There was an agreement reached in 2023. And now that agreement is being implemented. We've just started year 3 of this 5-year plan. The new report is due to come out in the end of May, early June. I don't know. Well, it comes to us at the end of May. I don't know when it will be released to the public, because our lawyers have to look at it. We have to have discussions and come up with a response. But right now we're in year 3 of the remedy. It's going slower than we would like, obviously. And we're getting some pushback from well-meaning citizens who are simply scared about what this means for their loved ones, because or for themselves, because change is hard. Not knowing what's going to happen is hard. When you've been somewhere for 40 years and then somebody says, okay, well, we're shutting this place down and you're going to have to move somewhere else, even though we know it's going to be a better situation for them because it'll be what they want, which nobody's ever asked them. Hey, what do you want? They were, in the past, we were just told disabled people, hey, there's a bed in this place, so that's where you're going to go. You know, they've never asked what they want. So to suddenly be asked is very jarring, because you don't know how to answer that, because you've never been asked and you never even thought about it in a lot of cases due to never being asked. So things are going really well, but we have, there's a lot of fear in the community right now, and I understand that, and I respect that, and we at the DRC are going to do our best to honor those fears, but also try to make them less by giving information about what this actually is going to mean for people, which is going to mean choice, and someone's going to sit with you, a local area coordinator or a complex needs specialist is going to ask you or your family, if you can't say so yourself, what does your loved one or what do you need? And they're going to give you what you need and fit the programs and services around you rather than fit you into programs and services.
Yeah, it's a real paradigm shift, right? And that's why it's so important that it's a process and that there are supports in place for people as they move through that paradigm shift and maybe what they've experienced throughout previous decades of their life. My next question, we'll see whether it's a hot button topic or not, but I'll start with you, Rabia. And the question is, in your experience, how open are legislators and government officials to working collaboratively with community members such as yourself?
To be honest, it's really about relationship building. It's really about tapping into people who maybe already have a personal connection. Most people mean to do good, but politics gets in the way. Rhetoric gets in the way. Sort of party, what's the word? Like the party dogma gets in the way. For us, it's really been about appealing to their hearts and values as Canadians. Data helps. So being armed with data, the numbers. We even, did Angus Reid polls. So polling data helps. Real stories from their own backyard really helps politicians. So right now what we're doing at Disability Without Poverty nationally is talking to disabled people, figuring out their constituencies and seeing who else is around them, trying to create these community advocacy groups that can go in and talk to politicians locally. Because me talking to somebody in Dartmouth has no impact or has little impact compared to someone who lives in Dartmouth, who's a voter. So recognizing the power of our vote is really important, and leveraging that at a local level, and building collaboration with friends and allies to go in and have those conversations, to influence politicians to listen and learn, and see value in collaboration and working together to make good policy and good policy choice. But unfortunately, like I said, politics gets in the way. If it's not personal, it's not priority. So somehow we have to make it personal.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of speaking to that value of getting people with lived experience and local politicians in the room together, which is something that I know you did. Was it last year or the year before when you went across the country and had a number of stops talking about the Canada Disability Benefit, and gave a chance to have people share their stories, and also invited local politicians as well?
That was last year, yes. And we continue to keep doing that.
Same question for you, Linda. In your experience, how open have you found legislators and government officials to working collaboratively with people with lived experience?
I think pretty much the same as Rabia had said. I remember a story shared with me in regards to, it was an exposure here at a restaurant here in Nova Scotia, and there was just one person with a disability, and they didn't pay much attention to that customer. That's just one customer. But the point of that is they came with their family and friends. So if that one person can't get access to the restaurant, that means that restaurant loses the business of their family and friends as well. So all of that goes away. So the point of inclusion and removing barriers is that they'll all be on the same ground, and it's not only dependent on one person. The dollar cost of accessibility is, sorry, the number, it's not the quantified number of that person.
Mm.
It's divided by everybody that's involved. So I think that's a great point of Rabia's story, is that a lot of people focus on the numbers and how those numbers are divided amongst all the people involved. But if you step back and you see the benefits more broadly, that means the impact of understanding improves. And it also has a positive impact on changing of paradigm shift. So we have to communicate the story from both paradigms and how the impact can be felt right away, and not dwell on the individual, but also emphasize the individual. And I think that's a helpful way. So it's not easy work by any means, but thank you.
No, it's not easy work, and I really appreciate what you've said there. And we know that when accessibility measures are put in place, it benefits a lot more than people with disabilities. Often the example is used of ramps benefiting people who are pushing strollers, but it's more than that. It is also about accommodating the individual as well, and speaks to that importance of allyship that Vicky was touching on in her introduction. That it's important that there's probably people watching who are allies to this community, and that everybody take an interest in what's happening to the people that they care about. Vicky, did you have anything that you wanted to add on that question about how open legislators and government officials are to working collaboratively with people with disabilities?
Yes, I do. I think it really depends on the individual and the level of government. I know for the DRC, to just touch on that a little bit, I would like to put out before I say this that now we have a great working relationship with the government, but it wasn't always that way. And until the Supreme Court of Canada refused to hear the province in wanting to get it, the ruling for the Human Rights Commission overturned. It wasn't until that they started to work with us collaboratively, which I think says a lot about government. Because, like the previous speakers have said, for government, it's mostly about money. And you can't put a monetary value on human life. You can't do that. And on human rights. I mean, you can't technically, but you shouldn't. So I think it really depends on the individual. I know when I work with my local MLA on the provincial level, it's great. I have a good relationship with my counselor here in Halifax. I know I can call her anytime and she will help me with what I need. But it really is about building those relationships. But it also, for some people, is you don't give them a choice. Because if they don't have to do the work, they won't. And I mean, that sounds a little jaded, but I am a little jaded after everything I've been through myself, as well as what I've seen members of my community go through. Not just people with disabilities, but people from every marginalized group you can think of. Which, of course, as Rabia stated, there are intersections of disability and other marginalizations. And I think we as marginalized groups, we're all connected, right? And if we all get together, people will do the right thing. But we have to be strong together. And so like you said, stop working in those silos. That being said, since the government wasn't given a choice, they and their team are now working together with us very well, and we have a very good working relationship. And I do not blame anybody on that team for the choices that the government has made, because they are just following Mr. Houston's directives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, we know that there are lots of wonderful legislators and government officials out there doing good work, but there probably is a conversation to be had around when there is harm done in a relationship and how that is repaired, and also that balance between relationship building, like we've been talking about, and when you use tools like legislation that you all have been involved in, and enforcement. And I especially appreciate your point about solidarity between groups that are marginalized, and recognizing that we're not in competition, even though unfortunately I think that has been a tool that has been used historically to pit groups against one another. It's not easy work. Linda said that at the end of her last answer. This isn't easy work at all that you all are doing. I'm wondering, Rabia, what has given you a sense of achievement or that the work you are doing is having a positive impact for the community?
Well, when I talk to people, actually, and really getting out there across the country and having both in-person conversations and online conversations with people, and the fact that, they feel that they're being heard, that their needs are being voiced, that is huge for me. I know we're taking baby steps, but these baby steps are significant. For some people, that $200 a month is gonna give them that haircut, those that new pair of winter gloves that they need. Maybe just, as basic as, painkillers that they need to get through the day. We know that it's very little. We know that it's not going to completely eradicate poverty, but it's one teeny, teeny, tiny step in the right direction. And I am grateful for that. Can we do better? Definitely. We have to do better because nobody deserves to barely survive in this country. Everybody has the right to thrive, including disabled people. And people with disabilities want to contribute, want to work. Sometimes they just can't because of the extent and nature of their disability and the way we measure productivity. So do they have the right to be pushed out into the margins and depend on food banks and find themselves with no place to live? No, not in my Canada. We are a nation where majority thrive. We are a quote unquote first world nation. This is not where I am used to seeing people ask for handouts in the street. Nobody should have to do that. So are we making progress? Yes, we are. Is there more work to be done? Definitely.
Thank you. What about for you, Linda? What's given you a sense of achievement or that your work is having a positive impact?
So the interpreter's microphone was just off. Just 1 second. Thank you. So my mind went back to the film that the deaf community made together in regards to the Halifax explosion, about the deaf experience when that occurred. So in thinking about how we made that film on a really shoestring budget, we had a small grant from the HRM and it was very small in value, but we had a lot of volunteer work from the deaf community, from different allies, from AFCOOP, the Atlantic Filmmakers Cooperative. And they're all very helpful, and I think that that film had a positive impact. It's just important to get the story out there across the world, across Canada. The film itself is, it's not amazing, but it did have an impact. But when I'm thinking about the work that we do, it does have an impact, and it's quite positive. However, one of the barriers that we experienced with that was we wanted to add descriptive video to the film so that we can show it to everybody. But the cost of descriptive video was way more than the cost to make the entire film. We simply could not afford to pay for the descriptive video. I was trying to find people that were with blind or lower vision to support us with that work. At that time, this was before I became an advocate for Bill 59. So that we just simply could not do it. So I'm thinking about how that film did have a very positive impact, but at the same time, it's a serious there's a serious sorry, it had a barrier to other people. So we need to just when we're discussing the silos between the deaf and the blind and the disabled communities, and how the effort within each community and the parallels that we can see between the communities. It's important to figure out how we're going to have that conversation so we can magnify our efforts. So we can all come together to have a collective effort. This panel is a very good step for that, I believe. Because it's not just we aren't the single disabled community represented on this panel. We're not. There are many disabled communities. So I think that this question we might need to talk about next in terms of working with the government and how we work with each other as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, hopefully some of those, I think locally relationships are getting stronger over the last few years here in Nova Scotia. And it'll be interesting the role that developing technology plays in making some of those things like audio description more affordable. Vicky, I'm going to ask you that question, and I know we're going to get the side hook here soon because we want to get to some questions, but I'd like to just hear what's given you a sense of achievement in the work that you've been doing.
Well, my sense of achievement really comes from people saying thank you. Because this work is very thankless. And you just sort of do it. And with the work I do, because I wear many, many different hats, I work a lot with fighting against MAID because I think and this is not the view of the DRC, this is just my view. I feel it is eugenics. So I fight very hard against that. And I do a lot of work that is very hard mentally and emotionally. My mental health is in the toilet because of this work. And every once in a while I go, why do I do this to myself? Why do I constantly make myself sad and mad and turn myself into a person that sometimes that I don't want to be? Why do I do this? Holy crap, what am I getting out of it? Is it doing any good? And then I go on the street and I get stopped by people and they go, I just want to thank you for your work and, keep up the good fight. And we're with you and we support you. And we support the work of the disability community. That is why I do what I do. Because I see when people say thank you and it helps me, or when my mother says, like, I went to the store and spent 10 minutes in the store and then 20 minutes talking about you and your work. And the cashier told me how grateful they were that you did this work and that you actually helped their mother, get what she needed. That's why I do this work. Because I don't always see the impact, but when I get those stories and I get that thank you, and I think many people feel the same, when you get that thank you and that acknowledgement, you're doing good work, and it keeps you going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like we could have a whole, probably talk for an hour about self-care and whether it's even possible. And to clarify, I mean side hook like pulling us off the stage, not like sucker punch. I don't think anyone watching is that angry, but we are getting very short on our time. So I'm just going to check and see. We actually don't have any questions yet. So if someone wants to squeeze one in, I think they probably have time to do that. Um, but I actually have one more that I'd like to ask each of you. And I'll ask you to be reasonably brief in your answer, but if someone is watching this and they want to get involved in shaping policy, they want to be involved with that legislation piece, but they don't know where to start, do you have any advice for them? And I'll start again with you, Rabia, and I know you have to drop off right at time.
Kayla, I think she may have froze.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I'll ask you that question, Linda. Do you have any advice for someone who's watching and wants to get involved in this type of advocacy, specifically with policy?
Yeah, we need more people in this space. It's often people experience burnout, have an impact on people's mental health. It's very common in this realm. But if we share the work and we can support each other, then I want other people to feel welcome. We need to start the process. We need to have, maybe if you have the energy, if you only have the energy to do a small thing, that's still something. There's a need for access in maybe in your work, or you see that. So if you see that the button for a door opener is not working, yeah, then it's important to inform the building manager so that that can be addressed. So that a person with disability doesn't have to make that call themselves. It's important because it can change someone's life. Or if you're working, let's say you're volunteering at the museum or volunteer for different areas. There's different ways that you can include people, maybe make visuals bigger, more accessible. Just thinking about how we can add more audio or visual physical access. Again, very small things, but the small things do add up. So please don't be scared to make those changes because they can be a good starting point to getting involved with policy. And then you can learn as you go and explore more opportunities. And you can see other people can provide their feedback on that. So maybe you're close to someone working on those issues, maybe Rabia or Vicky. Maybe think about how you can support them or support their mental health. Maybe take them out for dinner, help them settle down after a busy day. Just ways to get them out. And if you're really interested and you want to make a change in work, please reach out to experts and expand your network. Just start those conversations. And again, there's exciting opportunities to make change, all the way from small steps to very big ones, depending on a wide variety of groups that you're interested in. So don't be scared to reach out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think you've given us so much great advice in that answer, and I particularly like the piece about whether you're maybe not able to engage directly yourself in policy. Maybe that's not your thing, but think about how you can support someone you know who is doing this incredible work, like the panelists that we've heard from today. So, with that, I think that we will wrap up. So I just want to take a moment to thank all three of our panelists. You've been absolutely wonderful. wonderful. I also want to thank the Partnership for Access Awareness Nova Scotia Committee, who have made the events this week possible. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening to this panel. As we mentioned, the link will be posted, so you'll have a chance to go back if there was something that you missed. There's many events happening across the province this week for Access Awareness Week Nova Scotia, which you can check out at AAWNS.ca. It's also Red Shirt Day of Action for Accessibility and Inclusion tomorrow, which is an Easter Seals Canada initiative. So we invite you to wear red tomorrow and make a pledge to improve accessibility and inclusion in your community. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great
Thank you.
a great rest of your Access Awareness Week.
Yes. Bye.
Bye-bye.